All right, here we are, Local Energy. I'm your host, Peter Brecht, and my co-host, radio star Wade Spear, joining me from Oklahoma. Wade, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Oklahoma, it's beautiful right now. The weather's starting to get a little bit warmer up here. Last Friday night, my boy was playing football. I was actually getting kind of cold. It was like 60s with a nice little breeze.
Yeah.
93 for a high tomorrow.
Okay.
This is football season now, and football weather at least.
Yeah.
Early football weather.
Yeah. I mean, I like the changing of the seasons, right? But no, we're not quite there. Like California's cooling down. We're heading to Arizona in a couple
Okay.
hours. We're gonna head out there, and it's gonna be mid 90s,
Right.
in all the
But it's a
time. So
dry heat.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a dry heat though. Yeah, exactly. Anyways, I got you something, and before we go any further,
Oh,
I gotta
okay.
grab this. Hang on, I'm gonna send this to you. All
All
right.
right.
Now we went to a Savannah Banana game, and Wade, I got you a hat, okay?
Oh,
And
bananas
I
hat.
got you a bananas hat, and then of
Awesome.
course it's still in the wrapper, but you have your very own banana ball. So this can go
That's
on your desk.
awesome.
When you go to a game, you can
That's
wear
right.
those with pride. I got some personal news for you too. I watched
Okay.
Tombstone, so I'm working my
Finally.
way through your list.
Interstellar was first. You were less than
I was less than thrilled with
pleased with
Interstellar.
Interstellar.
I
Okay.
I have toyed with the idea of watching it again just to see what I missed, but
It's amazing.
I don't have the confidence yet. But Tombstone, I will tell you, it's actually in my top five. That movie was excellent. I mean, truly, don't know how I missed it all these years, but I mean, just a great show, a great movie altogether. So I still have Tenet, and I still have The Smartest Guys in the Room. Those are on my to watch list. But I thought Tombstone it sounded the most interesting, right? At least for now.
Right.
And plus, we're going to Arizona where Tombstone was shot. So I'm like, hey, let's go check it out. So it's a long movie. It's 2 hours long if you haven't seen it. And, I guess I'd just say the filming it's insane. Like the opening
It's amazing.
sequences and the music and the whole thing. It's an experience.
It's got so many one-liners in it. Like Val Kilmer was amazing.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah, it's awesome. It's one that we quote all the time. We use
Yeah.
it all the time.
Yeah.
So,
And the
yep.
quotes that, and that's, I think, what did it for me is the realness of it. Right. The one quote that I love the most was, there's no normal life. It's just life. So get on with it. Right.
That is not one I would have picked out. I mean, like, I'm your Huckleberry. There's one, or what's the other one where he's like, God, yeah, I can't remember. Johnny Ringo looks like somebody walked all over your grave. That's another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good ones in there. So I would say next, don't go to Tenet next.
Yeah.
Go to Smartest Guys in the Room. Watch
Yeah.
that one. You're going to understand a lot of the guys on Twitter. You're going to understand where their handles come from now, like where their
Yeah.
Twitter names come from.
All right.
Kenny Lay and
Yeah.
all that stuff. You'll have a good idea there.
A more of appreciation for it. Well, I'll do
Yep.
that then. Have you seen The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou? It's a Bill Murray film.
Yes.
Okay. All
Yes.
right. All right. Just making sure. That's like
I'm
what
not a
that's in.
huge Wes Anderson fan.
Okay. See, I like how Wes Anderson shoots his films. Same thing as Tombstone. Like I had a, so I like how he shoots, but it's a little
Okay.
quirky. So, anyways,
All Wes Anderson films are quirky. Let me say, I want to get into them.
yeah,
I just have such a hard time, like, really enjoying them. But I got one of my best friends, man, he loves everything Wes Anderson. It's like his
yeah,
jam. He loves it.
yeah.
Yep.
And there are some weird ones. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not like a Wes Anderson like fan. Like
Right.
there's a fan. He has a fan club, but there's some that I don't like as much. But that's one I
Okay.
enjoy. So, and I think it's because I
All right.
like Bill Murray so much. I love Bill Murray.
That's true. He
Um,
is. He's hilarious.
talk about some oil and gas stuff. There was a comment about our one of our videos, and there was
Okay.
something that I didn't understand. I should have written down what it was in the context, but this is the comments. The washouts were causing them to tag their bit before they got stuck, and I didn't know what a washout was, what it meant, any of that. I could have Googled it, but I'm like, I'm just gonna ask Wade.
I didn't read that specific comment, but I would imagine what they're talking about is so whenever you're drilling, especially if you're drilling with water-based mud, your formation essentially gets wet, right? It soaks up some of that water. And some formations, depending on what their composition is, they will what we call washout, right? So as your bit's going down, it's, say that we're drilling with an 8 3/4 bit, you've got an 8 3/4 inch hole size rock or the formation that you're actually cutting out. Now, because you're pumping this fluid and it's going fast and it's, got these velocities and all that stuff, some of these formations aren't very, I guess what you'd call competent. You know what I mean? They don't just stay like right here. And so as that fluid's going by, it's actually washing some of that formation out. And so
Okay.
here in Oklahoma, we see that all the time shallow. If you're drilling with water-based mud, we'll be drilling with an 8 3/4 inch bit, but we've run caliper logs down in there, like acoustic calipers, that send out sound waves and read them back. And we will see hole sizes in some of these up upwards of like 24 to 30 inches. So even though you only drilled it with an 8 3/4 bit, it's 2 feet to sometimes almost 3 feet. 3 feet wide in certain intervals. That's usually shallow in like your red beds or things like that. As you get deeper and your overpressure gets higher, like you have less and less washout. And some formations don't wash out. Like if you're drilling through a lime or something like that, a lot of time those stay what you'd consider, gauge hole, and your calipers will show that. So, what he's probably referencing there is if you've got a long enough interval of a washed out hole, your bit can kind of trail off a little bit and get caught up on some of that washout. Especially, we see it a lot of times. If you're going from a washed out hole back down to a gauge hole, you'll go down and you kind of tag up in there and you wash and ream, and your bit finds the hole
Okay.
that you've drilled. But yeah, so
Okay.
that's washout is essentially just imagine bigger hole size than what you actually drilled.
Okay, that's not what I
Yep.
expected the answer to be, but that
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense in what he's saying, so that's cool.
All right.
Now, my question is, so if your drill bit is kind of in this washout area, right? So it's kind of it can go any directions. You're saying that it
Kind
can
of.
go find the hole again, or is because there's no way to
Yeah.
really govern it in this sort of more fluid area, right? Or
Right.
is it not as
Yeah.
difficult or
So for one thing, I mean, gravity's always helping you kind of find that pendulum to where it's like back
okay?
to vertical, right? So that helps some. You do
Yeah.
have a bend on your motor, and so sometimes your bit will get kind of hung up, but usually you don't have much of a hard time getting back in that hole, old hole, especially in the vertical. Now, I'll tell you too, like something to think about, like you can, like, what we've done before, and like, so let's say that you've got a sidetrack, right? Especially open hole sidetracks. All right. So imagine that you've drilled a horizontal well and you got out of zone or you had some problems or whatever. You pull back and you sidetrack. So you're essentially drilling another hole out of that previous hole. Okay. Normally, what we want to do almost every time, let's say open hole sidetrack, you want to sidetrack to the low side of the hole. All right. Why do you want to sidetrack low side? Because gravity's working with you, right? So gravity's kind of pushing you down. So you get your bit, you drill a trough, you build a trough, and then you drill your sidetrack going down. Now, whenever you're like as you're drilling, you got to trip out of the hole, you change out your assembly, you come back in. What we'll do is you'll orient your tool. So using the MWD, like we'll start pumping up, we'll orient our tool face to the low side so that we know that bend of that motor is pointing down. And so you orient to the low side and you just push down through it, thinking that your bit and your motor is going to find that new hole and not go up into that old hole. And then once you've tripped in, usually another stand or two, you'll pump up a survey and make sure that your surveys now match with your new hole where you want to be instead of your old hole. Because I think we've all done it before in those sidetracks to where you'll accidentally track up into that old hole and you don't want to trip all the way down the bottom. You want to know very quickly so that you can pull back and get back into the hole.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
So
Oh man, that's fascinating. And it all, I mean, that makes logical sense, but like walking through it and kind of hearing how it works puts it all together. So,
all right, good. Okay.
okay,
There's a
perfect.
lot to
That
talk
was,
about on that stuff. So it's kind of hard sometimes to hit these from like a 10,000 foot perspective. And every situation is a little bit different.
mhm.
That's overall,
Well,
I
maybe
think that answers the question.
I would love to hear, obviously, we've got, kind of a set amount of time to record this week and that's fine, but would love to hear maybe some more topics on like what else we could kind of get into. Cause honestly, the
Okay.
downhole stuff is where it's like, cause you can't see it. So you have to
Right.
learn by either going out there, feeling it and really just kind of experiencing it or having someone walk you
Right.
through it. Right. So, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Experience is the best teacher for sure.
I guess I'm going to give you the choice. Do you want to talk about wireline or do you want to talk about proppant first?
Let's talk wireline. Neither of these are like my perfect wheelhouse. So both of these sound
Yeah.
pretty
All right.
challenging for me. So we'll go from
All
there.
right. So wireline. So in this case, I don't really have a
Okay.
question.
Okay.
It's going to be more like I'm kind of trying to get a feel for maybe the philosophical side of this industry. Right. And I talked to a guy yesterday on the phone, and he's in his 80s. He's been I don't want to get the date wrong, but he started Wireline in 1970. Okay,
Okay.
started always with an independent. The guy that he worked for back in 1970 had worked for Schlumberger and then had gone off and started his own wireline company. And his the things that he was telling me was he spent 10 years with that guy, then he started his own company, but the majors all had patents on their wireline tools.
Okay.
You couldn't just go out and, buy a wireline tool. You had to go build your own. So he would go to the University of Tulsa, go through all of
Okay.
the patent books. He pulled the stuff out and he learned how to build them himself. The first year, he built one tool, and then the second year, he kind of figured out what was what, and then he was able to build 7 tools at that point. So he's
Okay.
building all these himself. Still uses those designs to this day. He's got a company actually out there in Oklahoma. So his whole comment to me though was, and this is what I kept kind of asking him, and he was just so generous with his time, but he was telling me that the logs between and I wrote a whole article about it if you want to go read it, but in
Okay.
1980 is where
Right.
a lot of the logging style changed, I guess. So anything that was logged before 1980 is different and harder to read. So he's like, we have all these engineers now that are trained to read the
Right.
logs from 1980 to today, but anything
Right.
before that, they have a hard time understanding. And my question to him was kind of a shot in the dark. And I said, hey,
Okay.
is don't those logs tell you kind of like where you should go drill your next hole? And he goes, well, exactly. So I kind of wanted to get some feedback from you. And this is the first question kind of around this is there truth? I guess could you maybe supplement what he's saying? I think I believe what he's saying because he's
All
experienced
right.
it, but
Right.
is there reality to the fact that, we need to be able to read those logs that are older, maybe written in a totally different language, right? I don't know if that's
Okay.
how
Yeah.
does that affect you?
Well, I mean, number one, I would totally agree with you. Like any kind of information is good information. You know what I mean? Like we need to be able to parse through it and figure out if it's applicable to us or not. But I don't think the rocks changed, let's say, that much since the 1950s. You know what I mean? And we can, those logs would be extremely valuable. I'm not quite sure though, like without more detailed information, what you mean by like the logs changed.
Sure.
Maybe we're talking about taking different measurements. But even then, I think like still like gamma ray and all that stuff. I don't know. Maybe the tools started to
Yeah.
improve. I really don't know the background to what he's saying changed.
Mhm.
Maybe it was an improvement in the functioning of the tool.
I've always enjoyed talking to people that are
Right.
generations ahead of me, only
Yeah.
because I think that there's a certain type of knowledge that they have that you can learn from them and apply to your own life. And I think there's just also a sort of calm that they bring to the table that, when you're a younger guy and something goes
Right.
wrong, you kind of throw your hands up like, oh man, this is the worst thing ever. And then they're like, dude, I've seen this 25 times. Like, this
Right.
is nothing. You know what I mean? And I
Yep.
think that that's a really cool thing. So it's kind of like Warren
That is
Buffett, he's like, everyone else is panicking in the market. And he's like, yeah, okay, I've done this, 8 or 10 times, it's not a big
sitting on a
deal.
lot of
So
cash looking for
anyways,
opportunity. Right. Yep.
yeah, I guess he's probably the wrong example, but, um,
Well,
um,
I wish I knew what he was kind of referring to so I could speak to it a little bit better. That
oh
one
no,
that one I'm not
I just,
100% sure of.
yeah, that's totally fine. And then one other thing that I like, so he was walking me through in 2004. He knew the year is when they started changing out the wireline truck. So before 2004, every tool had a different gauge in the truck. Okay. And then they started re-outfitting these trucks so that everything was on one, display. And
Okay.
and he remembers sitting there in the truck looking at this display and thinking, okay, I've got all these tools. I got everything running through this computer system now. And I have
Right.
all this data coming in. And the only way for me as a wireliner to stay ahead of this is to get really good at adopting technology. So he's
Right.
like, okay, we got computers. Those were 1980 and all this. But I thought it was fascinating to me because I think the oil and gas industry, really any industry, we're looking at AI like, oh my gosh, it's going to do all these things. The reality is, we've had technology advancements, throughout the years. You had the computers, then the
Right.
internet, then, I mean, wireline trucks getting one display. So I think and that's probably where I enjoyed a sense of calmness. It was like, hey, I've gone through transitions before. None of this is really new. It's just a different, maybe speed at which we're now changing things. I don't know. So
Right.
I guess my fear of AI isn't perhaps as realistic as it should be. I don't know. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, I
And
mean, we've
there's
adopted
no
tons of
question there really, but
well, we've adopted tons of technology changes in the oil field. It was great. Whenever I was at Baker Hughes in the early 2000s, what essentially was happening so I worked at Baker Hughes Intech. What was happening then is that they were taking this technology that had been present in wireline, azimuthal gamma ray,
mhm,
resistivity, like all that. I wouldn't say resistivity, but I'd say azimuthal gamma ray and some of those measurements, and they were transforming them from, what I say is a more benign environment. I mean, you're connected to a power source, you're dropping it down in a well that's usually got casing in it, and they're taking that technology from the wireline side of the business and they're trying to put it in these downhole tools, to where, now you're not connected to a power source. You're using either batteries online or you're using fluid flow to power your tools. And then now you're having to send it up instead of it going through a cable or a wire line, essentially, you're having to send it up through mud pulse telemetry. And so it was really interesting because, from the Intech side, we are like, oh, this is new and this is challenging and all these different things. And, the wireline guys are like, they're looking at these logs and like, yeah, we've been looking at these for decades. And so it's interesting to see
Okay.
that adoption, and now it's even extended even further. There's been continuous improvement in terms of, one, how the data sent up, the transmission rate at which it comes up, but two, also just the tools and the measurements and the reliability, all those things. And so
Hmm.
it's definitely moving at a pretty quick pace,
Yeah.
but it's made us better too. Makes us more efficient.
Yeah. That's interesting. I like how they took, because it's kind of like I always look at other industries. So, like, if I have a problem in my own industry, I like to look at
Right.
other people and different things and say, how can I take what they're doing and apply it? So, it's pretty cool that they
Hmm.
took wireline concepts and then applied them. And I guess it makes sense,
Right.
but not everyone thinks that way, right? Where you're
Right.
you're looking for alternatives in maybe a different department.
Right.
And it's kind of, I did, there was a tech demo, and it was talking about how AI is going to be able to take patterns in every industry and then cross-examine them and look for different
Hmm.
ways to understand information, which is, again, we can do that today, but maybe not scale as much. So we're still going to talk about sand. You made a comment, sand's like a really big deal, and I dismissed it. I didn't really pay attention to it. Then it comes up again, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, you really have to have sand. And so I wanted to maybe understand what sand is doing and
Okay.
why it's so important for drilling. So,
So specifically, sand is used on the completion side, right? So on the frac side. So 10,000 foot deal, and like I said, this isn't the thing I do every day, but it's part of every single well we drill. They pump water down the hole at really high pressure, right? Why do they pump water? Because water is incompressible. Okay, so if you put enough pressure behind it, it goes out there and it creates fractures in the wellbore. So what you're doing is you're pumping this water at a really high rate, really high pressure to create fractures in the wellbore. Those fractures allow oil and gas to flow from the reservoir, right, from surrounding rock into those fractures and then up to surface where you can, you know, produce and send down the pipeline, right? The challenge is like, imagine
okay.
this, you go down there and you pump that water. Well, you have to flow all that water back, right? So as you're flowing that water back, what do you think the fractures do? Right? The fractures start to close in on themselves. They've got overburden from all the formation up above
Hmm.
it and all that stuff up there. And so that fracture starts to close in on itself. And when those fractures close in, it hinders the flow of oil and gas from the surrounding rock into your wellbore. All right. So what they figured out is that if you will pump sand with that fluid, with that water that you're pumping downhole, that sand is transported out into those fractures. And then as you flow back your water and oil and gas and all that stuff, the sand, most of the sand will stay down there and it props those fractures open. And so that's why a lot of the times it's not just called sand, it's called proppant, is because it props those fractures open. And so that helps maintain your essentially your pathway of your oil and gas to flow from your reservoir to your wellbore and then up to surface. And so there's all different kinds of sand. There's 100 mesh, there's 30, 50,
Yeah.
there's they used to that even pump like ceramic coat, all this stuff. There's a lot of different reasons
Hmm.
for all the different things, and people will see, I don't know. Some companies will prefer certain types of sand over other types, but overall, the purpose of sand is to keep those fractures open so you can keep the oil and gas flowing. Otherwise, those fractures will close on themselves.
Yeah. So it basically, would we refer to that as, like, I guess, improving the porosity, or is it not really a
Yeah.
porosity question? Because porosity has to do more with the natural density, or no?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you think about it in terms of like the flow path, right? Like it maintains the flow path because the thing is like once if that fracture closed on itself, you've essentially got, very little flow path for it to go through, right? Because like it makes a pretty good seal on itself and it can kind of block that flow. But when you put sand in there, those sand grains don't fit perfectly in with each other. There are still flow paths throughout all of that sand. And so that's
Okay.
what you need
Got
to
it.
think about is that, there are little porosity pockets between those sand grains that allows oil and gas to flow through there and water.
Okay. Awesome. That makes sense. And so the reason I'm asking about sand actually is I got a DM from an employee that works for one of the majors,
Okay.
and he was talking about they have a new proppant that they're using called pet coke. So it's coke which comes from, a cracker and a midstream, and
Right.
they're using this waste byproduct to effectively create this now patented proppant that they're now putting down hole. And
Right.
what kind of blew my mind was the figures on it. So, and this is Exxon. It's there's articles out there now, but so they're getting 7 to 18% more production in the first year than wells that they're fracking with sand only. So that's
Interesting.
pretty sizable if you're thinking 7 to
Right.
18%. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if
In
that's true, I mean, it's
2024,
absolutely huge.
yeah, huge. They can't use it on every well. They only use it where it makes economic sense, right? But the 50 wells that they did in 2024 produce those results this year. They're going to be quadrupling that, and they're going to be doing at least 200 wells this year with that. The biggest logistic they have, and maybe a reason that it doesn't always work out, in the numbers, is that they have to actually bring this pet coke to the site on rail. So they can't truck it in, I guess, which I thought was interesting. I need to dig into that more, but I guess it's really nasty stuff though. It's, as you can imagine, it's a byproduct. So it's not really fun to use, but I guess it brings some results. So pretty interesting.
I'd be interested, what's the data set, like
Yeah.
how big is it, all that different stuff,
Yeah.
There's probably a lot more research that they've got to do into it. But I mean, if they're looking at going to 200 wells, obviously they probably see some kind of promise there.
Yeah.
And there's been tons of iterations. I mean, when they first started using sand and wells, or at least for a while there, they thought this northern white sand coming from, I can't remember where it was, like it was crazy, and then they started running out of that and it got really expensive. And so they started like sourcing local sand, and they realized, well, hey, this is a lot cheaper and it still does really good job. Maybe
Yeah.
we don't need that really high grade sand and all that
Hmm.
perfect stuff. And so there's been tons of iterations on it. And you pump so much sand volume that those savings can really add up.
I believe it. I gotta, again, things you don't think of like sand, oil field, but you kind of figure out that all these things work together. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You're thinking about 3,000, some wells are, and I'm sure people out there are going to say there's a lot bigger wells than this. I mean, there's a lot of wells out there where you're pumping 3,000 pounds of sand per foot. Like, it's crazy.
what?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. So it's not only is it, I mean, because it's packed in there on top of that. Like it has to be really kind of pushed in because it's getting
Oh, yeah.
pressure.
Yeah. You
It's
use that
getting,
fluid.
yeah,
You use the fluid to carry it out as far as you can
right.
into those fractures.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The fracking stuff is just, it's mind blowing. And
No, it is.
I
It
can't
is.
wait to talk. We're going to talk to somebody about frack more. So, all right. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and anyone that's interested can check it out. So, Wade, we'll end the show with our world famous abbreviations quiz.
All right.
All
All
right.
right. I haven't missed one yet, right?
You've
Am I
only
still?
you only missed
That's right. The last
one,
one
and
last
it
week.
was on like it was like a norm, was it? It was
Yeah, that's
it
right.
was radioactive
Naturally occurring
material.
radioactive
Yes.
material. All right.
Yeah, that's the only one. So everything
At
else
least
been
I
good.
learned it. There we go. Yep. All right.
Exactly. All right. So the first one
Okay.
is EMW.
Equivalent mud weight.
Yes. All right.
Okay. All right. There's a
Perfect.
drilling one. Yep.
This next one I can't really spell, but it's
Okay.
the Greek letter pi. When you see pi, what does that stand for?
3.14. Man, I'm not sure that I've
All right.
seen the Greek letter pi on a
And
lot
I
of
think
drilling
this is
reports.
this is a completions term, I believe, but
Okay.
pi, it stands for porosity.
I thought that was the Greek letter phi was for porosity.
You know
So like
what?
the circle with the line
You know
through
what,
it vertically.
Wade?
What?
You're totally right. I'm over. It's spelled PHI. It's
Yeah,
phi.
phi.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
dude, the show's over.
Look at that.
We're done.
All right.
I can't even quiz you proper. That's hilarious. All right.
I'm glad I caught it. No, I'm not a
All right.
reservoir
So,
guy.
all right. So the Greek letter phi stands for
Yes.
porosity. There you go.
Yes.
All right. Wade is still 2 for 2
No,
today. All
no,
right?
I didn't get. Yeah, there you go. I'm gonna take the win on that one for sure.
All right. You should. All right. The last one is
Okay.
TOC.
Top of cement.
Perfect. Dude, 3 for
Or
3 today.
now,
You're
now
brilliant.
that would be in drilling and completions would be top of cement.
Okay.
In geology, that would be total organic content.
All right. See, now you're giving me like different answers from different people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
geologists are
for
okay.
geologists and those guys, I would think TOC is geologist reservoir. I think TOC for them is a little bit different. But yeah,
Okay. All right.
I don't think I'm just making that one up. We'll have to Google that one and see if it's widely
No,
used, but I've seen that one
I
before.
think, I mean, really today you're 4 for 3. That's how I see it.
Yep.
So
4
anyways,
for 3. I
yeah,
like it.
you're
That's
four
a
for
good way
three.
of
Yeah.
looking at it. All right.
You haven't missed a single one. And thank you guys for listening to Local Energy this week. I hope you learned something. And Wade, we'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds great.